This is a response to a recent video by Stickhead on his channel TheJoyOfSticks, in which he talks about emulation versus using the real hardware to play retro games. This was the first time I'd heard an argument about the advantages of real hardware over emulation that really made sense to me, so I recommend watching his video on the subject. My position has been that assuming the emulation is perfect or close enough, then there could be no difference. If it's really about the playing of the games, why does it matter what the platform is? The controller is a significant difference, of course, but if that was the only difference, then the advocates of real hardware would just use a USB adapter, and that's clearly not the case, so this isn't getting at the heart of the matter. I think I've also been a bit defensive about emulation because of the attitude I've heard from a few people who seem to regard those who use emulation as not true retro gamers or something. Like, oh, you use emulators, how gauche. This is admittedly not the majority view though, and Stickhead is definitely not an anti-emulator snob. Here's what he had to say about the advantages of real hardware.
I kind of compare it to MP3 players or streaming music services and vinyl. When I listen to vinyl, I leaf through and get them out and have a look, and it's somehow the actual physical act of getting it out, and you take it out of the sleeve and then out of the little paper, and you put it on, you gently place the needle on. Something about that kind of physical process of doing that makes me sit down and focus on that particular album. I'm so much more likely to play the whole album when I listen to vinyl than when I listen to Spotify, and there's an analogue there between that and video games and computers as well, because when I sit down to play an actual system, again I'm so much more likely to focus and really concentrate and get the most out of that game. With the Atari ST, it's the click of the power button, the feel of a floppy disk, the smell of the PSU as it warms up, the chug of the disk drive, that kind of thing, the click of a micro switch in a joystick. I sound really cheesy now, but it's those things that all add up to the experience and make it so much richer and more enjoyable is the right word, but it does make me focus on the experience, and I get so much more out of a game in that way.
The idea of the process, or indeed the ritual associated with using real hardware, is intriguing. It may sound grandiose to describe setting up and playing an old computer as ritualistic or even ceremonial behaviour, but I think it applies. Before I considered this perspective, the distinction between emulation and real hardware had always seemed trivial. But I wonder, is this the significant difference that motivates hardware purists? I also wonder if it has something to do with the way we will value something perceived as genuine over an imitation. Why do people value original paintings over indistinguishable forgeries? Why would it be unseemly to replace a lost wedding ring with an exact duplicate? When I go to a science museum and look at a piece of moon rock, it's different than looking at a photograph or merely reading about it. It's behind some thick security glass so I can't touch it. I would be elated to be able to hold it in my hand. Why? I think it has to do with our innate instinctive belief in essentialism, but this is getting way off topic. Funnily enough, I even saw a Super Nintendo in an exhibit during a recent visit to the Science Museum. That made me feel old. So I was curious, is there anything to this personally for me? Will I enjoy a game more if I'm using the real hardware? If I'm putting the cartridge in, pressing the switch and playing with the original controller. So that brings me to the experiment I'm going to do. I've decided to put this little test and see whether I enjoy this more with the real hardware. Until now, all my retro gaming for this channel has been done with emulation. For this video, I dug out my old Super Nintendo and I've got it hooked up now. So I'm going to play a game that I ain't played in ages on the real hardware. And I'm actually kind of excited.